Hey, what's up you guys? In this tutorial we're gonna work on the ceiling fan in 3ds Max and Substance Painter, so please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. Alright, so welcome back. In this tutorial we're gonna work on this ceiling fan in 3ds Max and Substance Painter. And I'm excited about this one because we're gonna use a lot of kind of procedural modeling, not in completely procedural, but we're going to use a lot of good tools, and the results are going to be nice and interesting. So we're going to start off by creating the cylinder, and we're going to use the edge extrusion method in order to start extruding these edges, as you can see. And I think it's going to be really fun to work on this model in particular. Okay, so as you can see, we are trying to create some nice details, and we'll keep doing this until we get something that is nice and beautiful. So I think this first stage is going to be really quick, and we're going to have quite a good experience here, and we're going to have a good amount of control using this method, this modeling method. And as you can see, I just created a cylinder here, and I'm gonna give it probably 24 to 30 sides, depending on how big this cylinder is. And of course, the bigger the cylinder, the more sides it has to have, because if we don't give it enough sides, it's gonna look very broken, and it's not gonna look smooth when we, especially when we do the baking Substance Painter and everything else. So, for the most part, we are creating this kind of, this piece is going to be decorative, and it's going to be for decoration basically, and there are going to be a lot of pieces here that are going to be interesting, and it's going to be very fun to work on. And this model basically has a lot of cylindrical pieces, and especially when we work on the fans, on the blades, there are going to be some there is an interesting piece that we're going to work on. And here, for the most part, especially when we look at it from kind of an overall perspective, it's not going to be that hard to create. So as you can see, we've done this several thousand times before. So we're going to extrude these edges here, as you can see, and we're going to start adding some details as we move forward. And basically, these are the details that are going to be part of the high poly model, because later when we start working on the low poly, probably we're going to remove all these nice details, because they are going to be covered using the normal maps. Alright, here we are trying to chamfer these edges here, because it's a nice way to actually get a curve. So the chamfer tool is very effective when creating curves and curved areas in general. Here as well, we are trying to make sure that this area here is a little bit pushed to the inside. And we're going to do the same thing basically on the upper side, and we're going to try to create some details. Probably we're going to experiment a little bit here, so if we don't like it, we're going to go back and remove all of this. So we will try to add a nice edge, then we're going to chamfer it in order to get something smooth. Alright, so as you can see, we extruded that cylinder, and of course, probably as you can see, I just decided to remove all these edges, because I thought to myself, why kind of this these areas here from the top are not going to be seen anyways. So why just waste extra edges on these areas that are not going to be viewed in the first place? So, as you know, this is a ceiling fan, so you're going to see only the from the bottom. So you're not going to be able to see from above. So all these all these areas are not going to be visible to the player or the viewer. From a polycount viewpoint or kind of perspective, we should be conservative when it comes to the areas that are not going to be seen in the first place. So here we are trying to create a cylinder that is going to be part of the piece that is going to be attached to the ceiling. And as you can see, we're going to try to do the same thing that we've done previously for the piece that is going to be that is underneath it. Probably this piece here is going to be, I would say, the size of it probably is going to change. So we're going to try to give it initial size, something that you can see here, and later we will try to change it if necessary. Because I don't know how this is going to look with the proportion of the other pieces, so we're going to try to give it a random size, then probably later we're going to change it. Alright, here we're trying to create another cylinder, and we'll try to align it to the previous one because we wanted to use it as a reference position. Since they are going to have the same axis and kind of the center, I believe they share the same center because they're going to be rotating around the same point, so this is kind of obvious. Also, this decorative piece is interesting because it's the point where the blades are gonna be placed, so it should feel like it has a little bit of strength and stability. So even though these pieces are not gonna be seen, since they're gonna be a little bit far from the viewer, probably 2 meters, something like that. So these details are intricate, but they're not going to be, the viewer is not going to be that close to. Alright, we're changing the material a little bit because this is gonna help us to see better. Also, I want to add a little bit of extra details here, especially since this piece is gonna be very visible. Alright, right now we're gonna start working on the blades. So there are kind of a decorative piece that is gonna be a it's kind of an attachment point, or a piece that is gonna be a bridge between the fan center and the blades. And this metallic piece is gonna be interesting because it's gonna have some details. This is by far probably the most complicated piece in terms of. We're not saying that this piece is complicated, but compared to the other pieces, it's fairly complicated. All right, we're gonna delete these polygons here, and we're gonna try to extrude a few polygons on the sides. So keep holding shift. We're gonna do the same thing from this side as well. Bridge between these two, and probably we're gonna chamfer that edge in the center in order to create a little bit of a nice, kind of create a nice curve. Alright, so we're going to now use the symmetry modifier in order to duplicate this piece and create the other half, since we don't want to do the same work twice. The freeform deformation tool is great because it allows us to change the scale of the piece as a whole, not as kind of polygons of vertices. Alright, also we want to extrude some of the polygons on the top because this will add nice detail. The shell modifier here is going to give us thickness, which is extremely necessary because we don't want to keep it flat and 2D. Alright, as you can see, we will extrude this border here in order to create the rest of the piece because it's supposed to have a curve. Also, we're going to rotate it about 90 degrees. We're going to go to the top viewport because we want to see everything in detail. We're going to chamfer probably this area here because we want to make it smooth and everything. Alright, so we are making a nice amount of progress already. For now, we're going to create the blades themselves. So, as you can see, this piece here, or this box here, needs to have a little bit of interesting shape. As you can see, closer to the center is going to be a little bit narrow, and far from the center is going to be a little bit wider. This is kind of something related to the air movement dynamics or something like that. So, or just because of kind of engineering purposes, I don't know, but it seems like this is how it should look according to the reference image we have. And if you want to get your references, please go to Patreon. You're gonna find it on attached to the files, depending on the tier you are signing up to. I don't know. As you can see here, we're trying to chamfer these sides because this is extremely necessary. So, using the cut tool, I'm trying to connect these vertices. So right click, cut, then start cutting. And we're not actually cutting, we're connecting between vertices using the cut tool, which is a really cool thing to do. Alright, so now we're going to use the symmetry modifier in order to bring the other half and kind of avoid working on the same thing twice, as we said before. Also here, this piece needs to kind of be fixed a little bit because we want it to be aligned with vertically with the rest of the pieces, which is a smart thing to do, by the way. Now we're gonna create a group for the blade because we want it to be rotated around 3 times. So we're gonna change the position of the axis or the pivot to we're gonna move it to the center of the fan as a whole. And as you can see, it's kind of inheriting the center or the pivot. Then we're gonna rotate it and copy it, or copy it as an instance 3 times, and in an instance we can see that we made good amount of progress. So for now, I believe we need to create some floating geometry. So we're gonna borrow these polygons on the top, and what we'll do is we'll just copy them or detach them as an element, and we'll work on them separately. So it seems like we are gonna add 2 edges, as you can see, and also we need to inset these polygons individually. So we're gonna use by polygon, inset by polygon, and increase the amount, and we're gonna extrude these polygons negatively to the inside. Small amount is going to be enough. And now we're going to start supporting the edges. So we're going to make sure that these edges are supported properly. Also, we want to curve a little bit these areas here. So these vertices, we need to select them. We need to select all of these, and we need to create nice curves, as you will see. So this will take a minute or two to select. It's kind of weird. So with all the tools of 3ds Max and the amazing tool set and everything else, so we sometimes find ourselves in a situation where there is nothing we can do except doing it manually. Probably there is something you can do that I'm not aware of, but this is what I know for now. Okay, so we're gonna deselect these at least because we don't need them, and alright, so we're gonna support the new shape we created, and when we apply the Turbo Smooth, you can see that this is quite a satisfying result. Also, we're gonna create some floating geometry here using sphere. So this sphere here is gonna be we're gonna use only a hemisphere. So we're gonna flip it 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and we're gonna convert it to volume. We're gonna delete this side and extrude the outer edge. Then we're gonna have to flip the normals. So we're gonna go to modify panels, search for normal in order to flip the normals. Because usually the inner side, we're using the inner side of the sphere. Usually the normals are kind of projected from the inner to the outer. So we're gonna, when we use the inner surface, we need to flip the normals. So here we are copying and making sure that we are going to position these pieces in the right place. Alright, nice. Also here we are trying to create Alright, we're gonna rotate this cylinder a few degrees or 90 degrees and put it against this surface. Alright, so for now we're gonna create some extra details, like we're gonna add one extra detail, as you can see here, and we're gonna collapse that open right there. Or we're gonna leave it open because actually there is gonna be a thread or a cord that is gonna be coming through. So you're gonna use a line in order to do this. We're gonna draw a line going downward. I'm gonna make sure that everything is created properly, and we're gonna add a hemisphere that we're gonna start from. We're gonna start modeling the pull down thread, and this is actually going to be a piece of wood, so we're going to try to model it appropriately. Also, we're going to make sure that these two pieces are going to be close to each other or aligned perfectly, because we need some coordination right there, and also we need this thread or this cord to be inside that piece we created previously. it seems like things are a little bit smaller, so we're going to make sure that everything is a little bit bigger than it is right now. So this thread needs to be taller and needs to be thicker in the same time. Alright, you're going to push it inside a little bit. It seems like we're done with the modeling for now, and what we're gonna do is from now on we're gonna work on creating the actually we're gonna create two layers, one for the low poly and the other for the high poly, and of course the purpose is we're gonna go two separate ways. One is gonna be the high poly, which we're gonna add uh, for this high poly, we're gonna add smoothing groups and support edges and everything else. And for the low poly, we're gonna go the other side, where we're gonna actually remove all the unnecessary parts. We're gonna remove all the unnecessary edges and polygons. Basically, lower the poly count to a certain extent. So for the high poly, we are trying to add support edges because this is supposed to be high poly and refined and detailed and smooth and everything. This process of adding support edges is going to be repetitive, and for the most part it's very obvious, so I believe this doesn't need a lot of explaining, so probably I'm not going to do much talking here or explaining since these things are very obvious. Alright, so when we are done with the process of supporting the edges, we will go to the low poly, and now we need to remove a lot of things. So we're going to start off by removing the floating geometry, then we will start removing some vertices and some edges. Control backspace to remove the edges, and for the most part we're going to start to collapse certain areas and certain polygons, as you can see here. So right click and collapse these sets of polygons. Hopefully you can see that. Alright, so also, since these pieces here are instances, the same effect should be taking place on the other pieces. Alright, so we need to take care of one, then the others are going to be taken care of automatically. So here we will use the target weld tool, and we'll start welding these vertices, as you can see. This process is going to take a little bit of time, but it's going to be worth it. And we're going to reduce the poly count noticeably. Alright, so when we make sure that everything is going to be in the right place, select everything, control backspace to remove the edges. Also make sure that you don't make any mistakes, because it's going to be problematic if you remove something necessary that kind of destroys the silhouette of the model. Here as well, as you can see, we removed a decent amount of edges, as you can see. Probably here this one is going to be removed as well, because I don't believe this is going to be a piece that is going to be I don't believe that is going to be necessary to keep it. Also, for this piece here, there is basically no need to keep it around. So especially these details and these pieces these details and these curves, we don't need to keep them. This one here is tricky because I believe that was too much. So I believe that what we removed right now was a little bit too much. So if you can keep it, this is gonna be probably a good idea, because I literally went back and kind of, when I did a test bake, I kind of I found out that I removed too much. So you better keep it right there, because the normal map, as I said before, and the maps that you can generate from the high poly is not a miracle. It's It's magical, but it is not a miracle. So there are some limits. All right, so now we are starting to work on the process of UV unwrapping, and as usual, this is gonna be an easy thing to do. It's not gonna be complicated. If there are things that need some special attention, we're gonna give it to it, and we're gonna walk through it as we usually do. So, for the most part, as I said before, it is all about organizing our UV shelves and trying to select, actually stitch all the pieces together. And you can do this by the right side of the mouse and select the stitch selected, or just use the shortcut Shift S from the keyboard, which is what I use in order to save time and, of course, to kind of save your energy through the process. Alright, so each piece is going to be individually UV unwrapped. We're going to use some automation, but for the most part, we're going to do some manual work. Some manual work is necessary. Of course, sometimes we need to fix some UV shields or UV islands because it's not going to be perfect. And yeah, the checker texture is very helpful when it comes to telling us if there are any distortions, if there are any problems with the mesh or something of that sort. It's going to be very important. For this piece here is going to be straightforward, so we're going to do what we're going to do is we're going to select and attach, or kind of attach everything together, as you can see. And we will organize the pieces. When we are done with that, we're going to put them aside, and we're going to apply the checker texture to see if everything is okay. This piece here is going to be different because we're going to have to deal with it differently, since it is kind of it's not only cylindrical, but it's almost like a sphere, so we're going to have to cut it into two halves. This is important because otherwise it's going to be, or actually we could have, to be honest, we could have dealt with it as a cylinder and it could have been just fine. This is kind of a shape or geometry that is between sphere and cylinder, so it has kind of both properties, and so we can deal with it the same, whether it be what we use in order to unwrap a sphere or to unwrap a cylinder is going to be the same thing. For this piece that you can see here, it is the same thing. It is a cylinder, and there isn't anything complicated about it. For this one, for this decorative piece that is attached to the blade, it's the most complicated in modeling, and probably it's gonna be the most complicated to UV unwrap. So let's see what we can do here. It seems like we need to be careful because we don't want to attach all these all the separate pieces together, since we need to respect the 90 degree rule. So all the surfaces that are separated by 90 degrees, we need to keep them separate. We don't have to attach them, so we don't want to attach those. Alright, so we're gonna keep an eye on the viewport as we um, arrange and kind of manage these UV shells. It seems like there are a lot of pieces that we need to keep separate, and also there are a few pieces that are kind of attached, not in a perfect way, but it still works, hopefully. So probably we're gonna detach them anyway. So select them, right click, then detach or break. Also, these pieces, it seems like it counterintuitive. Why would we keep them like this, separated and everything else? As we said before, in order for the baking process to work nicely, we need to keep the surfaces that are gotta be separated by 90 degree angle. We need to keep them separated, since the bake is not gonna be working nicely if we don't do this. For this blade here, it's gonna be a very simple. Probably it's gonna be the easiest piece to work on, as you can see here. Alright, so for this piece here, also we need to kind of, since it has spherical shape to it, we need to break it into two pieces, and the flat surface on top is gonna be, obviously, is gonna be separated on its own. this thread here is going to be straightforward. The process of UV unwrapping is going to be easy, so we're going to cut it open from one side, and then we're going to use the pelt tool in order to make it flat. Alright, so these small pieces actually didn't show you how to create, but it is something that is very simple to work on. I just imported it from another project, and it's probably in the future I'm going to import a lot of things that I'm not necessarily going to show you how to create, because I want to save myself. And I'm going to show you also how to save yourself time by using other pieces that you modeled, so you don't have to do the same type of modeling twice. So for now, we're gonna attach all the pieces together, because right now we're gonna create the UV template, and after we attach everything, we're gonna apply the UV modifier once again, and we're gonna try to put all the pieces inside one UV template. So we have all the pieces here and all these UV shells, and we're gonna try to put them inside the 0 to 1 space. The first thing I would say is to actually separate the pieces that are overlapping right now. So, for example, these blades here are kind of on top of each other. We have 4 separate blades, and we need to separate them like this in order to prevent the overlapping. And of course, if we want some results in texture that are going to be more natural and more believable, because if the same part is going to have the same exact texture, it's not going to look real, and it's going to look unnatural and realistic. So this way we're going to make sure that every inch, every centimeter in this model is going to have its own unique texture. We can leave it overlap, but especially when we have large areas such as the blades. It's going to be extremely obvious that the texture is the same. For example, just say screws and bolts and some small pieces. You can leave them overlap because no one is going to pay that close attention to these small pieces, and it's not going to be very obvious. Otherwise, it's going to be it's going to make your model look like it is. And I don't know, it's not going to look good. Don't do it. If you can, of course. Alright, so starting from the biggest pieces to the smallest pieces, we are trying to put everything inside the 0 to 1 UV space, and we are kind of paying close attention to everything. We, of course, going to make sure that there's gonna be no accidents inside the UV template. Also here, we are trying to um, separate these pieces since they were on top of each other. I basically forgot that these are kind of repetitive pieces that are on top of each other overlapping, and right now we now the game is more exciting because we have more pieces to fit inside the UV template, which is what I like. I like to have so many pieces because the puzzle is going to be much more fun to solve. All right, when we're done, we're gonna bring our low poly and high poly. We're gonna bring the naming tool because right now it is time to rename our pieces. So we're gonna select these blades, for example, detach them and give them a name. Then the name is gonna be uh, kind of is gonna have a suffix attached to it. This suffix is very important because for Substance Painter to know which piece is going to be baked on top of which, there has to be something that indicates and tells it which one is which. So the suffix is very important in order to differentiate between the high poly and the low poly. All right, so we're gonna detach and rename these pieces accordingly. The names, as I said before, in every tutorial does not matter, but the name of the high poly and the low poly have to be similar in order for us to have a nice bake. Alright, so here we are in Substance Painter, and right now we need to bring our low poly model into the viewport or into the canvas, and we will start the process that we call the bake. So we're gonna bring the baking dialog, and we're gonna bring the high poly, change some parameters, and we'll be ready to bake our model and start texturing. Alright, after the baking is done, depending on how complicated you made it to be, it's gonna take probably from a few minutes to an hour or something. Also depending on how strong your machine is. So we're gonna start creating some folders for different materials. For example, we have wood, two types of wood. We have also a bronze material or brass, whatever you want to call it. And we have steel, we have fabric as well. So for different purposes, we have different materials. So first of all, we're gonna use a wood material here in order to texture the blades. Use the polygon fill in order to select, use a mask and then the polygon fill to select the areas responsible or kind of related to that material. Also, we're gonna drag and drop this bronze material, add a black mask, go to the polygon fill in order for us to select the areas that we need to apply this material to. So these are going to be these areas. Probably it's going to be most of the ceiling fan we have here is going to be covered in this material. Also, we're going to add this steel material to the steel folder, and basically this is going to be for the smaller pieces, such as the screws and that small cylinder that is related to the pull down thread or switch. Also, we need to apply the second wood material for the pull down switch, piece of wood that is in the very bottom. Of course, this material has its own kind of extra layers, such as dirt and damage and everything. We don't really need that. we don't need it here, so we are gonna get rid of those things. Those layers are not really necessary. And it seems like the last thing we want to do is to add a texture or a material for the thread. So we're going to use a fabric material to do that. Or basically we can use a fill layer that is going to be black or gray that also is going to be good enough, because it's not that noticeable in the first place. So we're going to change the UV scale probably a little bit. And I think this is it for this tutorial. If you found it useful, please like this video, subscribe if you're new, and probably go to Patreon to get your files and support us as well. This will be very much appreciated. Thank you very much for being here. It was a pleasure talking to you, and yeah, I will see you in the next one.